It's your boy JB, also known as I Am Battlestrong. We're back with Mental Health Monday. We're dissecting this book, Post Traumatic, Understanding Complex Post Traumatic Stress Disorder. This book is written by Ariel Swartz. Thank you to Ariel Swartz, the author to this book. It's a guide to helping us. It says a mind-body approach to regaining emotional control and becoming whole. So, last week we jumped into the first intro, of course, of this book. We went over the introduction, and then, of course, we went over chapter 1, Understanding Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. And so, again, for those of you guys that have PTSD, anxiety, major depression, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, this book is for you guys. So take my time out to make sure that those of you guys that are also battling any mental health, that we're able to battle strong together, right? And we're able to use these tools and resources together. So let's start. We're on chapter 19. Last time we left off on page 18. So now we're on chapter 19. It says embracing change. It says it's human nature to seek safety and stability. You might say, this is who I am. This is who I'll always be. Familiar, repeated routines, simply life, and conserve energy. They can help manage stress because there is a comfort in what is known. New situations require more awareness in our surroundings. Some routines may temporarily reduce stress, but can lead to unwanted consequences of unhealthy habits, such as obesity, procrastination, self-sabotage, or addictions. In order to embrace any change, we need to take specific action to challenge behaviors and beliefs that no longer serve us. Research suggests that creating any desired change in life requires a repeated practice of healthy, promoting behaviors until they become new habits. Getting familiar exercise, eating a healthy diet, and developing positive social connections are among the best things we can do for ourselves to strengthen our resilience. No matter what you've gone through, you have the ability to heal your body and mind. The tricky part is this: once you allow yourself to feel the pain, to face it head on, you can free yourself from it. And when you recognize that limiting beliefs are running your life, you can then work to take charge of your mind and begin reclaiming your right to a positive outlook on life. It says a heavy burden. So Fred has been living with an anxiety for much of his life. Now as an adult, of course, he has 2 children who depend on him and a job that he can't afford to lose. After his chest pain stream last year, his doctor told him about an ongoing panic attacks, and insomnia. He was prescribed anti-anxiety medications, which kept him afloat, but left him feeling flat and depressed. Thankfully, his doctor also suggested that he seek psychotherapy. As we explored his past, he spoke of growing up in a chaotic, unpredictable childhood home. He said that after his parents' divorce, his mother was never the same. Slowly, we unpacked the heavy burden of insecurity that Fred has been carrying all this time. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder is a set of symptoms that are a result of pain and stress that often begin at a very early age. They could be all you've ever known. Naturally, these early experiences shape your perspective of yourself and the world. Healing asks you to turn toward your past, find relief in the weight of the trauma. As a result, you become less defined by your history and have a greater choice about your future. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder can be a result of the following types of experiences: childhood relationships with parents or caregivers that are frightening, unpredictable, or overwhelming; ongoing or repeated experiences of neglect or physical, verbal, or sexual abuse; growing up with exposure to domestic violence; being raised by a caregiver who has an active addiction or untreated mental illness; experiencing abuse at especially vulnerable times of development, such as early childhood or adolescence; facing severe social stress such as bullying, disability, or exposure to traumatic events within your community without support by a caregiver who protects and cares for you; being discriminated against for feeling disempowered without a caregiver or who helps advocate for you, or takes responsibility for your needs. However painful it might seem at first, unpacking the burdens of your traumatic history can be a thought of a profound self-care. As if moving into a larger, more spacious home, you're unpacking the powerful memories of the past. And it says, making room for more positive emotions. In the process of unpacking, you want to pace yourself so you do not get overwhelmed. You bring stories of pain out of hiding into the light of your awareness. By allowing each memory to find its right place, each one can be reviewed, understood, and worked through. So, we're going to go over the 8 contributing factors of development of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It says, why will 2 people with similar histories have different outcomes? You may ask, right? You know, you've probably heard somebody say, have you ever saw twins before? And you're like, oh man, there's a good twin and a bad twin. How are they same kind of genetics or whatever? And whatever. You know, you guys probably saw those type of comparisons, whether it was through siblings or whatever is. It says, why will 2 people with similar histories have different outcomes? Why is that? Multiple children can grow up in the same household, but one only feel traumatized. The development and expression of complex post-traumatic stress disorder is multifaceted, and it's not just influenced by exposure to childhood trauma. Let's look at why some people may be more susceptible to developing an adverse reaction to trauma than others. Number 1, intensity, duration, and timing. Needless to say, the longer the abuse or trauma continues, the greater its intensity, the greater the likelihood you will develop CPTSD. It's also important to consider that the timing of the traumatic stress. Children are the most susceptible to the impact of such stressors during critical growth periods, such as the first 3 years of life, when nervous system is extremely fragile, and during adolescence when they are forming their identity. Number 2, genetics. Research indicates that anxiety disorders, including PTSD, tend to run in families. While not a direct cause of PTSD, having a parent with PTSD is associated with a greater risk for the development of PTSD after exposure to trauma. Research suggests that there is a biological predisposition among these children. Number 3, environment. Parents with PTSD respond differently to their children, resulting in greater disruptions in care and attachment. Mothers with PTSD tend to be both overprotective and overreactive, which can result in children feeling both intruded upon and abandoned. As children respond in fear, anger, an environmental cycle of abuse can occur in which a parent may become increasingly abusive. Number 4, and Number 4 is in utero influence. Infants born to mothers who were pregnant during a traumatic event could have been resulted in diagnosed of PTSD, such as the 9/11 attacks, lower birth weights, and decreased levels of cortisol chemicals, of course, that respond to stress. So although this does not necessarily result in childhood abuse or neglect, such infants can be harder to soothe, more prone to colic, and increased risk for PTSD. So number 5 says family dynamics. So parents develop different relationships with different children. Factors that influence this bond with the child can include such things as comfort level with the child's gender, readiness to have a child, the events surrounding the pregnancy of birth. For example, unplanned or unwanted pregnancies can lead to resentment or anger toward a child. Or a difficult pregnancy or traumatic birthing process might cause a parent to reject or blame a child. Number 6 is modeling. Children who grow up in abusive homes tend to be exposed to multiple risk factors. Medical care may not be consistent. There may be insufficient modeling of hygiene practices or lack of encouragement or healthy promoting behaviors such as exercise or healthy eating habits. There may be also excessive modeling of high-risk behaviors like smoking or substance abuse. Number 7, presence of a learning disability or ADHD. There's a strong correlation between children with learning disabilities, including attention deficit disorder and child abuse. This connection appears to be bidirectional. Children who are abused at a greater risk for the development of learning disabilities because of the impact of chronic stress and trauma on the developmental brain. Additionally, children who have a learning disability of ADHD are at a greater risk of being abused when parents misunderstand or are triggered by their child's cognitive differences, detractibility, or impulsivity. Number 8, lack of resilience factors. Resilience factors are those protective resource. Resilience factors are those protective resources, such as parents, that alleviate the impact of childhood trauma. Research suggests that when parents are not supportive, even an attachment to an adult in your community who understands, nurtures, and protects you can lessen the impact of traumatic childhood events. Additionally, protective factors include participation in activities outside of the home and developing positive peer relationships. When resilience factors are lacking, the impact of neglect or abuse can be amplified by a feeling that those around you have failed to protect you. So those are the 8 contributing factors to development of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. This is the attachment theory in PTSD. Attachment theory describes how young children respond when they're separated from their primary caregiver. Attachment is defined by an emotional bond between two people, initially a caregiver and an infant, which provides a foundation for healthy relationships later in life. Secure attachment forms when we can depend on a safe place, predictable, attuned, and loving caregiver during infancy and early childhood. When caregivers are attuned, they are also able to read the cues that signal a child's needs. Sometimes an infant's cry is hard to understand if the baby's hungry, tired, or simply needed to be held. Importantly, parents does not need to be perfect. It never is good enough. Caregivers will inevitably misattune to their children on occasion, and these mistakes provide healthy opportunities to learn that ruptures in connection that can be repaired. So this type of parenting produces what is generally referred to as secure attachment. Secure attachment provides a home base that allows a child to feel confident to explore the world. Healthy attachment is associated with the ability to learn emotional regulation and stress tolerance and the developmental of healthy boundaries. For example, if a mother and her 1-year-old child go to the park, the child will initially remain close to the mother for a short period of time and then run off to explore. The neglect of early childhood abuse can accompany complex post-traumatic stress disorder are not associated with secure attachment. Years of research by Dr. John Bodley and Mary Answorth identify patterns of insecure and anxious attachment styles. Insecure ambivalent. Insecure ambivalent. The insecure ambivalent child has grown up with an inconsistent primary caregiver who is at times highly responsive and perceptive, but also can be intrusive and invasive. The child cannot depend on the caregiver for predictable attunement and connection, and consequently develops uncertain and anxiety. Insecure ambient adults tend to feel overly dependent and suffer from abandonment anxiety, and overall the sense of relationships are unreliable. Insecure avoidant. The insecure avoidant child has to grow up with a distant or disengaged caregiver who is repeatedly emotionally unavailable and rejecting. As a result, this child adapts by avoiding closeness, disconnecting emotionally, or becoming overly self reliant. Insecure avoidant adults tend to have grown up to be dismissive of their own and other people's emotions and face challenges when their parents long for a deeper, more intimate connection. Disorganized. The most disturbing attachment setting results in disorganized attachment style. This child has grown up with a primary caregiver whose behavior is overwhelming, chaotic, and or abusive. The caregiver is a source of alarm and confusion, resulting in a paradox related to the child's biological drive to seek closeness from the very source of the terror that they are trying to escape. This is often referred to as fright without solution or an unsolvable dilemma for the child. Disorganized adults tend to rely upon impulsive or aggressive behaviors to manage uncontrollable emotions. Relationships interactions can mimic the abuse they experienced during childhood with caregivers. They might act abusive to themselves or choose abusive partners because it feels similar. Complex post traumatic stress disorder is associated with all these types of attachment styles. So it says, in practice, which of the previous contributing factors of PTSD might you relate to in your life? Could it be intensity, duration, and timing? Could it be environment? Could it be modeling that we went over? Presence of learning disability of ADHD? Or lack of resilience factors? Now, how PTSD affects the mind, body, as well as soul. Children require consistency. Caregivers who are predictable help children develop clear expectations about themselves and the world. Such predictability provides a groundwork for safety and allows a child to adapt to many inner changes they go through during early childhood development. But this isn't the case in the household or neglect or of this isn't the case in a household or neglect or abuse. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder often arises out of interactions that occur the first years of life. Sometimes the trauma begins within the first months of being born. Such early childhood memories are not likely memories that occur later on in life. You may not have an image or a clear story. Instead, you might experience emotions without understanding why or even physical sensations um, of unknown origin. Growing up afraid has ramifications of all aspects of development: cognitive, emotional, and physical. The cost of childhood trauma can persist in adulthood until you find sufficient support to heal your past. The most common experiences among individuals with PTSD or complex post traumatic stress disorder, cognitive distortions. So these include inaccurate beliefs about oneself, others, and the world. The next one is emotional distress. So frequent feelings of being overwhelmed, anxiety, helplessness, hopelessness, despair, deep loneliness, shame, unfairness, injustice, and depression and suicidal thoughts are often triggered by social loss, abandonment, and disconnection. Disturbing somatic sensations. So these are historical threats that are maintained as uncomfortable body sensations or somatization. Sorry, in which psychological distress presents in the form of physical symptoms. The next one is disorientation. Inaccurate beliefs, emotions, and body sensations contribute to the loss of distinction between the past and present. Hypervigilance. Now, this word is something that helped me, guys, during my journey once I understood what this meant. High sensitivity to tracking nuances and subtleties in the body language and facial expression within other people is developed as an attempt to keep one safe. Avoidance. Avoidance involves learned patterns or shutting or pushing away uncomfortable sensations, memories, or even emotions. This is often maintained by defenses such as denial, repression, dissociation, and addictive behaviors. And then other symptoms of PTSD says additional symptoms that are common among individuals with complex post-traumatic stress disorder: feelings of irritability, self-harm, self-injury, such as cutting one's own skin or pulling hair out, eating disorders such as binge eating, bulimia, and anorexia, emotional eating, social anxiety and paranoia, difficulty concentrating, impulsivity or recklessness, excessive risk taking, and promiscuity. You know what's crazy about excessive risk taking? I relate to that one a lot. Like it's just never mind. Outbursts of anger, suicidal thoughts, plans or attempts, addiction, difficulty maintaining a job. A diagnosis is a good thing, not a bad thing. Keep in mind, and an accurate diagnosis becomes a part of your growing toolbox of knowledge that will help you better understand yourself and move forward with wisdom. A diagnosis can allow you to treat, can allow you and your treatment providers to work together to face and address your symptoms. So I'm going to stop there, guys, because I don't want to give too much information, right? I want to make sure that I don't overwhelm people with this information, because again, for those of us that have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, maybe some of this could have been triggering, and I apologize, but as you guys can see, like this is, it's come from the book, So during this book, we're gonna heal together, right? During this healing process, we're gonna identify how we can manage our triggers. We're gonna identify how we can emotional regulate ourselves. We're gonna identify all the different tools that we need to continue growing within our mind, body, and soul. So again, this is Mental Health Monday. Every Monday, we're gonna be dissecting this book, Understanding Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. And so next week, we'll go over mental and emotional symptoms. So this week, of course, we were able to dive into more of chapter 1. So thank you for those of you guys that tuned in. I want to read this to you guys, and this is out of the book that we've been reading on Wednesday. So I want to read this to you real quick. Actually, I probably just got it memorized, but I just want to make sure that I have this correctly. Let's see here. Okay, yeah, I got it memorized. So I want to let you guys know, for those of us, that have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and those of us that, are battling anxiety or whatever it may be that you're battling, understand that whatever giant that you're currently facing right now might be big, but it's not bigger than Jesus. So with that being said, I want you guys to understand that this is every Monday, we're going to have a Mental Health Monday. Tomorrow, on Tuesdays, we're going over, for those of you guys that just don't know, this is something that just started last week, I Am Battlestrong 101. Tomorrow, we'll be going over The Accidental Entrepreneur, 50 things I wish someone had told me about starting a business. So for all my aspiring entrepreneurs, all my current entrepreneurs, whether you're in real estate, sales, marketing, whatever it is, this has all the jewels inside this book. I highly recommend you checking it out. Again, this book is written by Susan Brown. So yeah, thank you, Susan Brown, for this book. Thank you, Louis Giglio, for this book, and thank you, Ariel Schwartz, for this book, as we continue to defeat our giants and continue to use these tools and resources to just be the change we wish to see and evolve as a unit and continue to battle strong. Another day is always another opportunity. I'll see you guys next time. God bless.